Hello, everybody. David Wallach here, New View Safety Coach, and welcome to another episode of the Shut Up David series. We've got a special guest for you today. Again, spoiling you all again with all these guests from all around the world. We've got Daniel Wilder. Daniel Wilder is the president and founder of Safety Instruct, as well as the chief technical officer at High Reliability Training. Daniel's got a mission to create positive change in companies by educating them on the immense value of their employees. Daniel brings refreshing, people-first perspective to workplace safety and training. So you can see why we've got Daniel on here: humanistic, people-centric safety operations and processes. His experiences have shaped his core belief that a company's success and profitability are directly tied to the safety and development of the workforce. Again, putting people at the center, putting people where they belong. Daniel's approach goes beyond just checking boxes. He emphasizes the importance of listening to a company's unique needs and finding the right solutions, even if that means making an outside referral. So we're not talking cookie cutter solutions here. We're talking bespoke solutions, which is what people need because, as we all know, context matters. With his experience and passion for putting people first, Daniel Wilder is here to share insights on building a culture of safety, empowering employees, and driving both success through prioritizing your most valuable asset, your team. Please welcome to the stage Daniel Wilder. Daniel, thank you for coming on, and great to have you.
Oh, thank you, David. I'm excited. Can't wait for our talk.
Fabulous. Well, just so people know, I think I mentioned it in your intro, Daniel's in America at the moment, and I'm here in Perth, WA. Got a little bit of time. What time is it there for you at the moment, Daniel?
It's 8 p.m. So how's the future?
Yeah, exactly. 8 p.m. So it's going to be 8 p.m. on a Tuesday for you, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah.
Whereas it's 8 a.m. on a Wednesday for me. So yeah, I'm literally Marty McFly. I'm in the future for you guys at the moment.
That's right.
Okay, well, why don't we start off? Obviously, this podcast goes out around the world. You're obviously known in America, but we've got people, they're going to be in South America, in India, in Africa, in Australia, and parts of Europe as well. Why don't we give them a bit of a sense as to who you are, what you do,
Sure.
And how you got involved in Safety Instruct?
Definitely, yeah. And I'll actually start at the beginning. And that awesome. Actually is a rather unique story. I needed an internship in college, and my scoutmaster, I was heavily in Boy Scouts when I was a kid, ended up becoming the president of a large training company here in the United States. And he was never really that kind of person that you told no to, right? He was a big military guy, all that. And so he called me, he says, I know you need an internship. So you're going to come down here to Texas, you're going to live with me, and you're going to learn how to do safety training. I was like, okay. So, you don't.
So that's you told yeah. What you're going to do, isn't it?
Yeah. He was like, I want you down here. I want you to learn the ropes. And you know what? Those first few summers down there, I think 90% of it was go sit in the corner and listen and learn. Yeah. And but it was actually a big blessing because I ended up wearing a lot of hats, and I got to kind of see the progression of how safety at the time was really being implemented. And that was 2004 up to really about 2010. Obviously, the role evolved and I became full-time. But it was fascinating to see. That was really the cusp of when video and technology was really starting to impact a lot of the safety development here, a lot of the program side of house. And so from that evolution, I helped them kind of build their online systems on how they could deliver the content online. Because again, this is, 2010, right? Netflix is still young and all that other. So people aren't used to this yet.
Yeah.
But also the exciting part about that process was learning, and seeing in not just large organizations, but even smaller ones, what was effective, what was really impacting from a training standpoint. And, your experience, it's unfortunate that most of the time it's reactive. And so what they do is, companies go, oh, well, we had this happen, a fine, an incident, whatever it is. So now we've got to go push everybody through some training, right? And as we all know, that's death by PowerPoint usually, or death by cartoon or clip art.
Yes.
And it doesn't do anything. Doesn't resonate at all. Which was always my big shtick of, I hated the fact that, everybody just kind of checked the box. And it was even more evident when I would start to tell people what I did. and you just start to see their eyes kind of glaze over a little bit, right? They just be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
how quickly can I change the conversation? I don't want to know about this. I already see this at work, right?"
Yeah.
And it was pretty unfortunate, but I took a very different stance from it. I was like, "There's got to be a better mousetrap here, a better way to approach this." And it was really down to the experience. And so again, I love to tell people that I magically thought up the best way to approach this, but it was really 10 12 years really of trial by fire of, does this work, and discovering, just like you spoke about, off the shelf is enough, but it's not going to actually impact or change things. And so from there, the company was actually sold in 2015, and I was blessed with the opportunity with a few of their clients that said, "Go start a company, and we'll follow you," because they liked the approach that I was doing, a lot more people centric, even with our videos, and really focusing mostly on the story. That to me is how you really connect with someone. David is a great example. If I came on here and it was extremely stoic and right, and I was just very corporate and brass tacks, right, you'd be pretty bored and you wouldn't feel any connection. And it's the same way with our training. That's one reason, everybody has those mentors or those instructors growing up, right, that they just remember because they built that human connection and they resonated, right? So, in 2016, we formed Safety Instruct. I formed Safety Instruct with the massive support of my wife and Faith, and my two dogs at the time. They were also helpful in that process. But
everybody's going to chip into this business. Come on,
it was all in. Even my very young kids at the time. But the first few years were honestly very humbling. And I learned a lot, which was great, and I was thankful for some very loyal customers that kind of helped us keep our head above water. And then from there, we've continued to evolve, and that's, I guess, the part that I always like the most about this job is every day, literally, there's a new challenge or a new way to approach it, and every day we get the opportunity to improve. So, kind of going back to that original question of what we do, we provide video-based solutions with online software as a service. So I always tell people, everybody in the room can raise their hand with a bad online training experience, right? Everybody's got a bad taste in their mouth, can tell a horrible story. So what we want to show is a frustration-free one where the entire experience, from not just the content, but the platform, the support, every part of that process is easy. Because if you start to take training and you're already frustrated before you even start the content, you're not going to remember anything. You're already tuned out. You're already done.
Yeah. And this goes back to our conversation before we started recording this, when you asked me about this online platform that I use, which is StreamYard. I'm not promoting anything. I'm not getting paid for anything. It's StreamYard. It's an online service that I use. And obviously, you've been a technology officer. You're intrigued because you hadn't used it before, and it boiled down. The brass tacks boiled down to it. It's easy, it's effective, and it does what it says it's going to do. And that's why I use it. And that's what you picked up on straight away, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It does what it says on the tin, and it does it well.
And I think that's one of the frustrating things for many organizations is they just assume it's not going to work, or they just assume I've got to get through this. They don't actually put value in the training that they're doing. And they don't realize that, yes, there are actually effective tools and methods on how you can, create scalable training in your organization. And again, I'm obviously, like you mentioned in the beginning of the intro, very people centric. So if people aren't the center of your training, you've already failed.
Yeah.
There's no connection.
Okay. Well, let's build on that people of the sense, because I know you're obviously the chief technology officer for High Reliability Partners, and you own you also your business is Safety Instruct. So there's sort of an umbrella, isn't there, of organizations that all all with similar values, I'm assuming, and all with similar principles and all with similar objectives, which is why you're all together. Why don't you give us a bit of a sense as to what that looks like? And maybe if I pull up the website as well, that might be easier to visually demonstrate to people what the relationship is between the three of you.
For sure. And, I will say I was blessed with an opportunity. I always joke and tell people it was through, persistent harassment of Ron Ferris to get on a call with me. So all those people out there that are pushing those LinkedIn, trust me, it'll eventually work, or they'll block you. That also happened to me.
Yeah.
So
block.
Yeah. But yes, we actually formed High Reliability Partners again from a client request. It was really based on the fact that clients were frustrated with having to go to multiple vendors to solve multiple things in their organization. So our objective was really, well, what if you could just deal with one company, and then based on the needs, you can utilize the companies that are within it. And in any landscape, especially on the training and consulting side, right, that's going to change. You're going to need different pieces throughout the process and the roadmap. So our real objective was to create a complete, one-stop shop for organizations that want to fundamentally solve their sustainability and fix, any organizational gaps.
Gotcha. So High Reliability Partners was developed as all good solutions are really, by a drive from the market, essentially. And you obviously have Safety Instruct there. Who are the other partners? High Reliability Training and Hope Consulting. So we've had, as you mentioned, we've had Ray on here already, and his video is going to be released sometime soon, probably within the next week, to help promote his visit to Australia, where he's going to be on the east coast of Australia, talking about high reliability workshop that he's going to be doing with a couple of colleagues of mine, a couple of friends of mine over there. But so we've got the Safety Instruct here, which is obviously your area, the High Reliability Training here, Enhanced HOP and HRO Training, which is Ray, I'm assuming.
It's actually all three of us. It's Ron, Ray, and myself. And it's really video-based delivery of HOP and HRO. So there wasn't really an organization before that delivered effective training in those areas. Everything was done in person. It's a very, exciting part is that it's very innovative. It's very cutting. A lot of people call it Safety 2 or next generation of safety. But then Hope Consulting is the in-person. So they do the in-person mentoring and consulting. They do some training as well, or a hybrid. A lot of times we'll utilize Safety Instructor, High Reliability Training to get the fundamentals, to get a lot of the classroom done.
Gotcha.
And then the in-person is more company specific.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's have a look at, so we understand how they all work together. And the fact that you are all providing integrated solutions for clients is the word I'm looking for. It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not even coffee yet.
Another cup of coffee. Yeah,
I need another cup of coffee to get my brain through that. So, how did you manage to come about this? You mentioned, that you harassed via LinkedIn, you were borderline being blocked by Ron. There's obviously a vision here for you to begin with, to actually start with those questions. What was that vision?
Honestly, it was about the fact that I knew our approach was better because we had success. The challenge that I had, especially at that time, this was end of 2019, was, I didn't want to take on an investor. The previous company I worked for did, and I saw what it did. I saw how the quality immediately changed. Everything was focused on margins and sales and the corporate, So I was really averse to bringing on an investor. So, to be honest, I was, bootstrapping it. I was just going out, grassroots, cold contacting people. Anybody's never done that before, I feel like it's a rite of passage. Like, Lord, it's humbling.
It's humbling and humiliating and soul destroying all at the same time.
It is. So, and then from there, I had the opportunity to finally, again, being persistently annoying with Ron, and he finally looked at some of my content we had done and then said, you know what, safety training is already pretty boring stuff, but this guy's got a new spin on it. And so he was already working with Ray. They own Hope Consulting.
Yep.
And so, ironically enough, a few weeks after that, Ray was in my area and drove up to meet me for breakfast. So we had an opportunity to sit down, and that's kind of where the ideas started to flow. And then honestly, COVID hit, which ended up putting, a big, hard stop with a lot of the Hope Consulting business because so much of it was on site. It was in person, right? That was their core.
Yep.
And so the silver lining from that was they had the opportunity to start building that HOP and HRO library of content. And we had filmed for, hundreds of, if not thousands of hours with clients. So a lot of our business before COVID was actually custom training. We'd go on site, we'd film and produce content. But the caveat there was we got to keep the footage. And so from that, we started to build our own library that we could off the shelf sell, right?
Yeah,
so from that, we started to build the HOP library. And, really that, just to help people, have a better sense, that process really took over 2 years to really get a decent fundamental library in place.
Why don't we have a look? Can we have a look at that? Is that something we can look at?
Yeah, if you go to the high reliability training or the SI site, we have actually, if you count our micros now, over 650 courses, but we have what we call orientation. So major courses is about 400. This library now has been in development for we're entering our 9th year. So,
9th year, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's a hell of a time for building online product.
It is.
So where can people get a sense as to what these videos might look like? Is there somewhere they can go for that?
Yeah, there are a couple of free previews on there as well, based on if you look at an individual course. All of our courses have previews, so they can kind of get a sense. But what we typically recommend is people just reach out to us and we can send an immediate access, just so that way they can actually go through the experience. All of our courses are interactive. We focus on adult learning style techniques. So, 2-minute preview on a website isn't going to tell you how the experience is, right? And that's all free. If you notice, they'll leave us a message in the lower right corner. During normal US hours, we have actual people, I should add, not a bot, that man those. And that way,
it's your wife and kids,
questions.
Isn't it? That's who you've got.
I wish. Are you kidding? It'd be cheaper. If I could train my dog to do it, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, we are blessed with a great team. And again, that's one of those. I'd say one of my biggest lessons learned in the last few years is that there's just no shortcuts. And so building an internal team has been a great learning experience for me. And with that,
I like how you spin that. It's a great learning experience as opposed to frustrating, annoying. You have to put a positive spin on these things, don't you?
Oh, it's so funny because I'd say the one biggest change over the last 5 or 6 years has been the fact that I feel like my ego has been burned about 50 times. Right, it's just some ashes over here in a corner. Like it just doesn't exist. Because every time you're like, I'm doing great, I got this right. Whew, there's somebody. If it's not an employee, it's a client or a prospective. It's like we're just going to grind you to a halt. Oh yeah. But you're getting I love it. Oh,
you're getting too big for your boots, mate. Here you go. Have a problem.
Exactly. Everything's too hunky dory. We're going to spin this around. But yes, as you can see, our focus is that power of human connection. And to me, that would be hypocritical if you weren't actually able to talk to a real person when you reach out to us, or if you want to be able to build and understand how something interacts. So I'm pretty fanatical about that side. That's, again, I came from a very large training company and they were, big corp, and it was very frustrating because they really just wanted to, squeeze margin and cut corners. And it's why I didn't continue to work for them, to be honest with you, after they were sold.
I've heard a few people say the same thing, to be honest with you, which is the passion, the direction, the founders' why as to why they started the business just gets absolutely drowned out by the investors, be it public investors or be it private investors, and their objective of making money. And that then becomes the sole reason, and it loses that soul as to why they started in the first place. But sorry, mate, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I completely agree, and that's actually one of the reasons I was so averse was I saw it happen in real time. The previous company took on an investor a couple of years before they were sold, and that investor's sole purpose was to see a return. They didn't care about anything else. And it burned so
you
many
can't
bridges.
blame them to a degree.
No, like, not at all. I mean, it is what it is. Like, we all do that, right? Everybody's got to eat, right? We've all got to make a living, but there's a way that we can do it, in my opinion, that's, still has integrity. And that fundamental approach that we have here is a prime example, later this week, I'm going on site with a chemical manufacturer to film a new hire orientation, because that company came to me and said, look, we've tried off the shelf. It doesn't work. Our employees don't connect with it. They don't, it doesn't solve it. How do we fix this? And I said, you've got to get your people in front of a camera.
Make it their story, make it their narrative, make it their make it their journey as well. Okay, so now we've done a bit of background review. We know how Safety Instruct fits into how reliability partners. I want to talk now about the inherent, the contextual problems that I see here in Western Australia, which is a heavily resource or particularly ore industry. And as a safety consultant, I had the fortunate opportunity to travel to lots of different mine sites all over Australia, actually. The unfortunate side of it is, for every mine site that you go to, you have to do their induction. You have to do their training packages, which in some cases can take 2 to 3 days just to get through this rote thing where you're just literally, and they've put certain things in place trying to mitigate people just sitting there pressing next, whereby they time you if there's no activity on the mouse for like 10 minutes. If they'll ask you these arbitrary, well, not arbitrary, but they're just ridiculous, like 5-year-old level questions on a whole bunch of information that they've just flashed up in front of you, or they've put a video up and they've told you all this technical stuff. By the way, this is regardless of your job as well. Even if you're going there as a cleaner, you still have this vast expanse of information that they're trying to cram into you. So that's the context here in Australia as to how people get inducted to these large organizations, especially, like I said, the and the resource sector. And nobody that I've ever met in the time that I've been going away likes these things. They all hate them.
Yeah.
And the typical punishment as well. The typical control when things go wrong here as well is, especially on mine sites, is either a window seat, which means you get put on a plane and flown back home, or more training. So I'm assuming this isn't too dissimilar to what you're facing in America. Is that correct?
No, completely. Yes.
Yeah. So how do we address both those issues? How do you address both those issues?
Well, for one, the value of the training is important from what is it actually covering? What is it actually talking about? I mean, you just gave a great example there of it tells you random questions, right? To me, that's, if I'm the learner that's taking that, I've immediately devalued the whole process. Oh, this is a waste of time. Why are they asking me this, right? They don't trust me. And so to me, that's really a great segue about trust in the process. So in America, it's the same problem, right? It's, what's your corrective action after an incident? Remedial training, more training. He fell off a ladder. He needs to take ladder training again. Okay. I think the underlying challenge, at least with most of those types of incidents or issues, is the fact that we're not actually listening, especially, from who's, senior executive in an organization to that frontline worker, right? You've got this massive separation that's happening. So when we look at training, this is going back to that people-centric. If they're not feeling like their company actually truly is investing in them, and that means not just quality training, but also training that actually addresses the need, right? Because how many times do organizations have somebody fall off a ladder, and then they go watch ladder training on a completely different industry that has nothing that's applicable to them, that they've seen 10 times before, right? They're already tuning out. So if you don't personalize the process, and more importantly than that, you don't showcase your management that's also doing this with you, right? So it's like strength in arms here. If they're not in the trenches with you, they're not also valuing the training and not just saying, that they've gone through it, but when they speak about it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many organizations where the senior management, for lack of a better word, basically thinks that they don't apply, right? That they don't need to go or adopt the training themselves. They don't need to go through it. And to lead is to serve. So if you're not actually going through everything that you're expecting an employee to do, immediate failure. So from my experience and in my opinion, organizations have to start actually listening to their employees to help address those. If that employee doesn't feel like they have a voice, anything you give across them, I'm not even talking just training, but policies, procedures, it's just going to fall at their feet. They're not going to heed it.
Yeah. No, exactly right. And I think Clive Lloyd quoted someone in his book. He's got a book, From Compliance to Care. He's an Australian psychologist, and he was talking about it. Said, look, unless there is an implicit level of trust in the organization, any safety objective or any change that you're trying to make will be futile, because people need to know that they've got the trust and the respect, and that the senior management of the organization is doing what they're asking you to do as well. You can't have a senior leadership team that are one hand going, safety is important, you have to focus on safety, and then next minute they're getting drunk at an office party and driving home in their car, because people are going to see that and go, how important is safety then, really?
Well, I'll even give you another example of that. And it was an interesting one that happened organically, again, by a client who suggested it. And it was in the middle of COVID. And in America, so many organizations had to quickly adapt and implement policies and procedures and return to work and the whole nine. And so one of the things that we helped with at the time with a lot of companies was helping them deploy that training and then validating it. So you'd get this lovely email, David, and it would say, click here. And now click here to accept and say you've read and you read and understand our new latest policies, right? Right. And how many of those did you actually read?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But one company took it different. And what they did is they actually had their CEO, instead of sending a memo, the CEO videoed themselves, and they sent a video of it. And the CEO said, this is why we're doing it. And it went down. And it wasn't even long. It was maybe 2 minutes. It was nothing. But guess what? Massive uptick in response immediately.
Yeah.
And what it showed was, some of the feedback we found out after the fact was so many people didn't even know what their CEO looked like.
Yeah, right.
Because it's a massive organization. So how would they know?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden there's an identity.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a person at the top that they can relate to some degree.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the end of the day, at least they can say, oh, I know who that person is. But if it's this anonymity, right? They're not going to have a clue. And so why do they care? But now this person does care because he's talking to me.
Yeah. So now this person, and this kind of loops back to the beginning when you talked about narratives and stories and creating that, giving that more emotion so that people remember it more. You can't just, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is how I see what we're talking about here. You can't just have this didactic communication process where you're pushing information out there with very little context in a very dry and very, very formal way. If you take that same information or information that's required and you give it a narrative, you give it personalities that people can relate to, you give it context that people can relate to, even the context that they're working in, stories from people that are working within their organization, maybe even at the same plant as them, that back up the information that you're given, you get a higher uptake of information, of compliance, essentially, which is not a bad thing. And people can relate to it more. Is that what we're talking about here?
100%. And I would even give you a personal example of that. And it happened about a year ago, but it's just, those things that happen that just stick. And I remember, how we always are obviously helping organizations. And one of the things that we obviously advise them to do is to get feedback from their employees. What can I do better? Where do you see concerns or issues? And so, it was a weekend. I was with my son at the time, who was 6. And I said, well, what can I do better as a dad? I just wanted to see what he would say. And
that's a dangerous question to a 6-year-old.
It is, but it was good. I'm blessed that I have a great relationship with my kids. But his response was really interesting. He said, I really hate it when you tell me to do something and I ask why, and you say, because I said so. And I went, well, why? And I was like, where's that? And he's like, it doesn't matter whether or not I had to do it. I know I needed to go do whatever it was. I just wanted to know why. And I went, okay. Well,
that's a really deep insight for a 6-year-old, isn't it?
Oh, no, he is. He's a very empathetic young man. So, but it was a really great takeaway for me of going, to me, employees know that they need to do that, right? They come to work to do a great job, but you immediately create a disconnect if you don't tell them the why.
Gotcha. Yep.
So to me, that's one of the biggest things in the messaging and the story, right?
Yep.
Is they want to belong. They want to feel connected. They want to feel part of the process. And the moment that you create this separation by just hammering them over the head with training, they're disconnected.
Yeah. Especially if, heaven forbid, anything goes wrong, any incident happens, and then you go, well, and they turn and say, well, we told you in that 15-hour presentation that you went through
exactly
4 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Where was your retention at? Come on. Yeah,
exactly.
You signed here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was even a digital signature. We know you watched it and you answered these 3 silly questions at the end.
Organizations do that. They do that, though. That's the frustrating part. And it's about, again, in America, it's a challenge at the moment because of accountability. Like there's this severe push of accountability down to the individual employee to the point where, not only are they scared to sign or accept anything, right? They feel like everything is going to get them sued or whatever it might be, but it also, again, creates distrust at the end of the day. That's, to me, the fundamental challenge.
Yeah. And I think that does have a big drive in it, that litigious style culture that there is in America, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's what we see from here and what I saw in England as well. Even down to the adverts on TV. If you've been hurt, we can get you this money, and everyone's out to defend themselves, and everyone's trying to protect themselves. And when you do that, you lose that community, don't you? You lose 100%. That sense of belonging to a group of people. Like you, I can't remember who it was now. He said something. He said, talking about having a proper safety culture, a proper culture within an organization. If your children did something wrong, you wouldn't fire your children. So what makes you, what I mean? So what makes you think that just because your employees do something wrong, not that they did it on purpose as well? There's a fine line when we're talking about doing things wrong here. We're not. If people come to work to do, to hurt themselves, to hurt others, that's an HR issue. That's not a safety issue.
Right.
People don't come to work to have, to injure themselves or to injure others or to have, to put everybody out. It's the systems that need to be changed in order to prevent that from happening, because people will always make those, always make those mistakes. But okay, so we know what some of the problems are with these training packages and with this information that's been put out there. We know how you in Safety Instruct go about changing out by giving it context, giving it narrative, giving it personal, making it relevant, or as Simon Sinek would say, giving it that why, giving it that purpose. Is that a philosophy that you try and get into all of your training packages that you create?
It is. Compliance is not enough, right? We all know that. Everybody knows that. That's what's so ironic is you talk to anybody, even a frontline employee, right? They know that the training isn't sufficient. They'll tell you that. And so, it's completely based on, we always like to work with subject matter experts, and they help identify things that are happening or emerging, if you will, in the industries that we work in. So when we develop content, we're focused on that. And, even, especially when we're creating customized solutions, we want to make sure that we're listening to that client and understanding, okay, what are the challenges you've already been facing? Because it helps us to kind of cater that messaging, or, cater, how are we going to tell this story, right? How are we going to craft it? And again, I think that's where a lot of people try to just put everything into the certain, let's check the box on compliance. We know that if we're going to do ladder safety, we've got to cover these points. It's like, well, yeah, but what are some of the other challenges beyond that are happening? Because that's where you make it real. And that's where people can start to resonate. Even if they're not seeing their workplace, they're going to understand, okay, you're actually talking about something beyond just, what is the standard, basics, 3-step, points as you climb a ladder kind of aspects, right? That I've heard 1,000 times and I'm tuning out already. And I will say one other area we've had a great success with, and I love this part of my job, is when we help organizations develop case studies. So we take a previous incident, right? And we kind of recreate the story of what happened and why. And so, especially when we're, either provided footage or we have the opportunity to film, and we can recreate that process, the employees that take that or watch that, right, that resonates because, I've heard about that. I knew John that was a part of that, issue. And so it personalizes it. But when that's actually kind of one of our what we call quick wins, right? Of like, if an organization's like, I'm not ready to fully commit to custom content or to, really customize the whole process, because it can be intensive, especially when you're talking about larger organizations. But case studies are a great way to kind of sprinkle them in throughout the other training, the off the shelf, and it provides that we talked about all this. Here's the bridge to us. Here's the bridge to our workplace and how it actually relates, or how it's creating an impact here. And it does. There's some powerful stories out there to tell. And that's the greatest part. There's so many more stories to tell, right? I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to have that opportunity to, and if nothing else, is to take those case studies and prevent something in the future, right? Yep. History loves to repeat itself.
Yep, it does, doesn't it? And I can see now even more clearly the link between the three organizations there, because even being able to create that case study, that's going to take a lot of courage. That's going to take a certainty.
Fred, you cut out on me there.
Yeah, you could add it. Yeah, same here. We're having a bit of a storm here at the moment.
Okay.
hope it doesn't affect too much. But I was saying, I can see how those even just having that case study would require help or services from the high reliability partners as well, because it's not just a case of doing a case study. It's a fact that the senior leaders within the organization are going to be prepared to take that incident and learn from it and share from it, and actually go, okay, well, what can we do from this incident that would help improve the future so that it doesn't happen again? And as that case study, I would imagine that case study, you can incorporate some solutions towards the end and say, okay, well, this happened to Jeff, and here's Jeff talking about it, and this is what happened, and recreating it to a degree. And this is what we're doing as an organization for the future on the recommendations of people like Jeff and Paul and Sam, whoever it is at the front line who are doing those jobs. Is that how it's working in with you?
For the most part, yes. And I will say we actively promote and encourage organizations to use video communication. One of our more successful examples, they actually showed, the CNO and the frontline manager who was involved in the incident, and they interviewed them, provided us that footage, and we incorporated that into the case study. It made it so powerful because it wasn't just one person, right? It was several of the people involved in the incident, their response, how it was going to be prevented in the future, how the training was applicable, right? And I think that's the other thing that happens a lot. Again, we go back to communication, right? Where you're told to go, David, go take that training. Yep. Why? Because I said so, right? If you don't preface them with the importance of it, it's immediately not going to have any value or application. So that video communication component to me is it's so powerful, and it's fascinating because if you look at beyond safety, right? A prime example is sales. Think of how much money organizations pour into sales, and it's cutting edge, it's innovative tech, right? And on average, safety's like 10 to 12 years behind that.
Yeah.
Right. Because organizations have not realized the value of investing in their employees.
Yeah. It's
Right.
not an immediate return, and it's not a cost center. It's more of a cost center for an organization than what it is a profit-making center, isn't it?
Right. Exactly. They look at it purely on dollars out. They don't understand that there's so many more dollars in based on not just keeping your employees, lowering your attrition and turnover, but also investing in and helping them grow within your organization, because they're the ones who shape it. I don't care what anybody says. Your frontline employees are the core of your organization's success, its culture, and it's a sustainability.
Yeah. How has artificial intelligence affected or impacted on your business? Obviously, that's a big topic at the moment.
That's
the release of ChatGPT within the past 18 months, and there's so many. It's one of those things now, isn't it? It's a bit of a genie that's come out of the box, and it's affecting so many aspects of life and the safety world just as much as any other industry. How is it impacting on your business, and how are you utilizing it?
Well, to be honest, it's been a benefit, although there was a big learning curve in the beginning. And really where it's helped us be more effective is in the creation of course aids, interactions, variations of exam questions. And I'm going to give this disclaimer too. I think the blessing and the curse with AI, right, is that it's fantastic. It can create content so fast, stuff we've probably never dreamed of. Now, the caveat of that, the challenge with that is it likes to make things up. It likes to tell stories too. And so what happens is you get in the mix of this and you're going, that doesn't seem right. And you do a little research and you're going, nope, that was the wrong thing. So,
it's like the drunk guy in the bar, isn't it? It's compelling, but a lot of it is kind of like, no, it doesn't make sense.
Like this isn't going to work. Yeah. So I would, where we've utilized it the most has been in the content. I wouldn't even say creation side as much as the organization side. And a lot of our larger courses, they have extensive handouts and interactions and exams. Many of our courses have multiple exams. It's a very time-intensive process and cost-prohibitive process. And so it's allowed us to basically develop content at a faster rate, which is a blessing. But I will leave that disclaimer there of, without our team of SMEs, and it's you've got to be real careful. You cannot take what it says as gospel. And we've identified within the last few weeks, we've identified so many times where it'll even pose an exam question and we go, that's not correct. So having a heavy review process in place with not just, random people, but SMEs, I can't emphasize that enough, is critical to make sure that the content of what you're saying is, because, again, I'm sure you've taken training, right? And it's good, it's solid, and then it gets to one point and you're like, what is this? This makes zero sense. This is completely stupid. Who designed this? And you just derailed yourself completely. Anything that you learned up to that point is gone. So we are incredibly careful about the type of content, and more importantly than that, the message of the content. Like, what is it really saying? How is it being perceived or interpreted? And so, and no lie, we've had to evolve some questions over time and based on feedback, even pre-AI. Because, we just don't anticipate, especially when we enter new industries, which I love. There's always a fun little learning curve of, well, you don't use the word like that. The term is this, or, I will say quickly on the Sora side of house, I don't know how much you follow on that front, but it'll be very interesting to see from a creative standpoint how we can safely utilize Sora. The real benefit on our end is going to be
Sora.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sora is the next level. It is being outputted by OpenAI. It essentially does what ChatGPT does, but it creates video content on the fly. So you type a sentence.
Okay.
I want to watch a construction worker walking down a site, and then he trips and falls and sprains his wrist. Boom. Creates the video. Perfect.
What? Okay.
Yeah. And it's in closed phase. So basically it's not open to the public, but they're releasing updates as they go through it. Obviously I have a lot of hesitation about that because there's going to be some massive creative concerns. But the other side of it is it's going to provide us the opportunity to recreate incidents without obviously any danger to anyone that we could not normally create. So, like and case study is a prime example.
And depersonalized as well, because I'm assuming these these AI rendered people are going to be anonymous. They're going to be completely
generated. Yeah. And although I will say it is amazing how real they look. You should look it up after this call. Like it's Sora, Sora. There's a lot of examples already, but it's the next level of AI is the short answer. But I'm careful about its adoption. And I won't lie, we're also experimenting as well with AI with our software, with very early in this process again, but data modeling, reporting, things like that. And I see a lot of application. I'm excited about the future of what it'll be able to do, but we're not there yet because you got to teach it. That's the end of the day.
It's the drunk guy at the bar. It needs some rules. It needs some rules.
Needs some direction.
Some guidelines. Yeah. It needs some direction.
And you need to take car
this
keys.
way.
Yeah, you got to take car keys sometimes too. That's the other thing is don't rely on it. It's not gospel.
No, it's not. It's not. Definitely not. And I think that was the big learning curve that people have gone through over the past 12, 18 months, which is, we thought it was going to replace X, Y, and Z. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I said, look, even if you take some of the what are perceived as lower skill jobs out there, such as, fast food attendants or something along those lines. And I'm not disrespecting those jobs whatsoever, but any particular job that you can think, which is an entry-level job, which is which doesn't require any kind of formal education in order to get it. Those jobs haven't been replaced yet. Those jobs are still too complex to do for AI and for robots and technology to take over. We have to put this into perspective here. There's who would you rather get to create your training package or whatever it is that you're asking AI to do? AI, which is the drunk guy at the bar, or a human being. And a human being, by the way, can do far more than what AI can do, because AI is still 100%. Not taking over those particular roles. So where do you see in the future, like what is your future aspirations for training, safety training, taking into account, we've got these technologies that are coming up, and you're very cautious of them, and probably rightly so as well. What is the future for you for safety training?
Fundamentally, it's the same message. Now, it's just like anything else. I think keeping that people-centric human connection focus is paramount. But how we deliver that message will change and it'll evolve. Whether, COVID, one of the other silver linings of COVID was the fact that it cut years off of adoption of video-based training and remote-based training. We had so many organizations that I was cold calling and getting no's pre-COVID that came back to me and said, okay, now we're ready. And I know that they would have never done that if it had been for COVID, right? Yep. Because their current systems were successful up to that point. So, the messaging obviously changed a lot because of that. But I think it's going to continue to evolve. And while I think video and this, personalization is going to still be the critical key to it, we have already dabbled a little bit with virtual reality, creating virtual reality based training, and it's in its infancy. I don't personally see it being heavily adopted for, at least another 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. But the exciting part about that, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to be in VR yet, but it's so immersive. Oh, it's so immersive. And if you're on a higher end headset, you have the opportunity to feel like you're really a part of the environment. So a lot of our clients are actually in energy. So it as an example, it would provide us the ability to take them into, a control room or into, how do you respond to a potential event? You could never take these people through this. You could never go through these procedures, but in VR you can. So then it's muscle memory, right? So that's just an example of how I see the evolution of training happening. But
especially for those high risk tasks.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Who is already leading the charge, I should add, are those high risk industries and high risk organizations that are facing these challenges and don't have a great solution, right? They don't care to invest heavily into this because there is no alternative, right? I can't shut down a reactor and then, let's get the new hires through and get them accustomed to. No, that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So, but you look at mines or construction or other industries, they're not going to be adopting this kind of tech for a while. But I do believe it's inevitable. I do think it's incoming.
I think there are companies here, and there are a few people here in Australia who are fairly involved in this whole AI and VR, and there's another one as well, not virtual reality. It's integrated, where you integrate aspects of the physical environment into the virtual reality as well. So you actually pick up that
augmented
object.
reality.
Augmented reality, thank you, and
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. So that there are a few, and I think there are a few also mining organizations, which especially underground, which are looking at aspects of rescue operation training to be done through these types of stuff as well. So it kind of brings me onto one of my concluding questions here, which is, so obviously you're based in America. What about organizations that are based in different countries where they, potentially speak different languages, or they've got different context to words that they use? Is that something that you can cater for?
It is, and interestingly enough, AI has actually helped us with that, for making that process more cost effective. We still always utilize an SME in that local language, because, like you just said, the context matters. And especially when you're talking about safety or training in general, you got to be really careful that you're not saying something in the wrong way or to be interpreted the wrong way. But yes, we do. We develop training in a variety of languages, blessed with many opportunities there. And again, I think that's one of the other exciting parts is AI in particular is going to allow us to scale more rapidly. And it'll be interesting to see, like with Sora's adoption or more globalization that you're going to see, where organizations are going to say, okay, I need, that content, and I need it delivered in 12 languages because I've got locations in 12 different countries.
Yeah.
And see, in America, you're required by law to teach the training in the, original language that your employee learned. Now, how heavily is that enforced? That's up for debate. But I will say it's, becoming more recognized, thankfully. And I think a key part of that element, or why they've realized it, is because, if you have a Spanish-speaking person that's watching English-based training, right, they're not going to say they don't know how to understand everything because they don't want to lose their job, right? And the organization isn't going to invest in Spanish-only training because it's cost prohibitive for their, 100 people out of 1,000 that have learned Spanish first. Yep. So, to me, language is really important, right? We go back to the human connection. That Spanish speaking person is not going to have value when they walk out of that training. Now, do I think AI is going to help with that process? 100%. But again, it's not, it's not the magic pill, right? No shortcuts. No. You still got to utilize an SME in that space.
But it's a step in the right direction.
Oh, definitely.
With regards to actually bridging that gap between information and actual information retention.
Yes.
Which at the end of the day is what we're after, really, isn't it? It's these, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's those adult learning principles. And people say, okay, well, what are adult learning principles? And I studied a little bit about this when I was in between, some of my prior degrees, and I started a degree in adult education. And I'm fascinated to a degree about how we learn, and especially how we learn as we get older as well, and the things that we have to do in order to be able to facilitate that process, because it's completely different learning now from when I was like 15, 20 years old. But adult learning is essentially finding psychological, biological ways to help people, adults essentially, retain and store information and be able to use it and assimilate it when needed. That's essentially what it is, isn't it? That's what we're talking about here.
Completely.
And one of the primary aspects of that is the information coming to them in a language that they understand clearly.
Yes. Yeah. First step, right? Comprehension. So
yeah, exactly.
It is.
Exactly. So you've got clients all over the world. You can make packages in different languages. Obviously, if you can't get to the place, well, you can rely on them actually recording some content and sending that to. A lot of this doesn't need to be face to face. You can do this remotely.
Correct.
I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. A lot. In fact, I would say the vast majority, 75%, 80% of the custom work we do, the organizations have a media department, or they've gotten footage over the time from different aspects, and we can work with that's where our video team is wizards, I like to say. You're a wizard, Harry, right? That's always kind of a running joke in the office because, they do things, and I'm like, you made that from that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
It's
that's
crazy.
awesome. Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we've pretty much covered all the bases that we wanted to cover there, didn't we? Which is fascinating. And I, a bit like you, I'm also fascinated about how people learn, but what impact is this technology? Because in essence, what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove the automation that technology has brought in relation to creating these trainings, and try to bring people more in alignment with that. But as the technology increases, it's actually helping us to a degree bridge that gap and close that circle between the person and the information. It's ironic how the technology took us away, but it's actually helping us maybe start to close that loop back again. So that's a fascinating time, isn't it?
I will add one other nugget. One thing we've seen a little bit of with AI, which I think will also be a part immersed in the future, will be personalized content. AI will know how you learn the best versus me, right? And so it's going to then adapt the content to be reflective of your primary learning preference. Some of us learn better visually, some auditorial, right? So it's the same thing here. I do see that happening, and AI already recognizes that, but I mean, we're talking very early right now. But in a few years, would not surprise me at all if organizations create a fundamental type of training content that then evolves based on who's taking it.
Wow, that would be a step even closer towards personalization information for people to understand, wouldn't it? Amazing times, mate. Amazing times. We're on the cusp of some.
Love it.
Well,
I remember in the beginning shooting with a 40-pound camera, and making VHS tapes, the old block VHS tapes. I mean, that was where I started. That. So I'm already like, whole new world here.
I mean, like even with this, I can turn this around now. I can get. I could, if I really needed to, I could get this. I can get this video put onto YouTube in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, see, it's crazy. Yeah, the deployment aspect is huge.
I think it was Jordan Peterson who was talking about why YouTube and other online technologies and digital technology in general is such a game changer. It's the new Gutenberg press, because there's very little barriers to entry. The efficiency of actually recording it is so cheap nowadays. I mean, we've got an internet connection and we've got an online platform that we use. Things are just getting so much easier for people to be able to share information. Now, what that's going to do is going to direct people towards people like yourself. So, okay, we've got this massive information that we can transmit, but we need to transmit it in a way which is effective and which is personable. Which gets the message across, which is where the quality is going to come in once the volume's been sorted and people get over that and go, okay, well, there is a lot of information here, but the quality is really crap. It's like, okay, let's start looking at the quality of that and start making that specific to this industry and this person so that they actually benefit from the information we're given, which at the end of the day, when you're talking about safety information, it's there for the benefit of the person, isn't it?
100%. I would also like to add...
waffling on.
Oh, no, all good. I would like to add, I will be speaking with Ray in Eastern Australia. Particularly,
you'll be here as well?
Yes, I will, as will Ron. And I'll be primarily talking about the future of training and how you tell a story and how you can effectively scale your critical risk management strategy within your training as well. So that's a fun topic I love to discuss, and I think that's the key word, is discuss, because I love this. I always want the interaction. It's always fun when I go talk to a crowd and I don't think they're used to that level of engagement, and I kind of get the big deer in the headlights. Like people are like, I got to interact with them, I got to talk to them.
we just hate to listen. I didn't sign anything to say I've got to give it
exactly. But they always, we utilize I love to utilize different clips and things like that to break the ice and get people in, and they always do, and it's fantastic. I love this guy.
My forte is, I'm sure you wears, well, forte, areas of interest to safety and coaching, hence the name of the
Sure.
the site. And there's this form of coaching called narrative coaching, which is essentially coaching via stories, which obviously what narratives are, which is using the person's experience of their life in order to be able for them to better understand why they are where they're at and how they can change their narrative and how they can essentially change their story. But it's all about stories. It's all about stories. And, if we can
100%.
capture those stories in that context, it changes everything. It really does change everything.
Amen.
Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for putting aside the time. I know you're over here. You're going to be meeting Josh Bryant. You're going to be meeting Stephen Harvey. You're going to be meeting a few of the colleagues of mine as well, a few of the friends. And you got this workshop with Ray and Ron as well, which is going to be looking at high reliability organizations. And obviously the area you're going to be touching on there as well is, the narrative base for the critical management side of things as well. So if you're listening to this, obviously these videos are going to get put out in June to help support and promote that trip that you're coming over here as well. So I've already lined it up with Ron. So
Ron Ray. I'm the weird one. I got Daniel. I'm the standout.
Yeah, Daniel. You have to call
I'm also the young one for clarity. So let's make sure you emphasize that.
You didn't just throw that grenade into the room and walk away.
It's good for him. It's good for him. I keep him young. That's what I tell him. So.
But yeah, so it's been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and thank you very much for talking about the innovative ways that you're trying to get safety training across and the stuff that you're working with your current customers. Very much appreciated. If you could hang around for just a minute or so while I close off, just want to catch up with you afterwards.
Great.
Some people decide to disappear, but I always like to catch up afterwards. But it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So everybody, that was Daniel Wilder talking to us about how we can improve our safety training, which, let's be honest, it's something that needs doing, isn't it? And it's one of those aspects of safety. We've got so many elements of safety. We've got well, I'm not going to name them all now, but safety now is no longer just a siloed occupation. You've got to take into account, well, we have to utilize all the skills that we know about to help people receive information, process information, and use information in the future. And along with that, as we alluded to during the video as well, the culture of the organization needs to be able to support that learning and support that information flow and to promote the information flow as well. So just literally giving people a whole heap of information and telling them to study it and learn it, whatever it is, and then completely forgetting about it or asking them a few random questions is not cutting it anymore. There needs to be integration. There needs to be that narrative. There needs to be the context. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be valuable. We has to be quality learning on that bedrock of the organization, supporting that as well. So I hope you got some information out of that. All the links for those websites, for Daniel's website, High Reliability Partners, Safety Instruct, they're all going to be in the descriptions down below. If any of that was of interest to you, please feel free to reach out to Daniel and his partners. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer any questions you've got. As you mentioned, they do work with clients all over the world as well. So thank you again for watching and subscribing. Very much appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care, everyone.